Welcome to the Dad and Cole Football Patrol.
That's right. What's up, everybody? I am Dad.
And I am Cole.
So, Cole, the OTAs, off-season training activities, have been going on in the NFL this past week. So, what's happening from the world of the OTAs?
So, the Seahawks have lost a lot of players on their squad.
Yeah, so who are some of the guys who are no longer with that we might have been used to over the past 3 to 5 years for the Seahawks?
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, your guy Jimmy Graham, he's with the Packers. Cam Chancellor's gone. Richard Sherman's gone. Michael Bennett's gone. He's with our Eagles. Cliff Avrill's gone. I mean, that is a lot of firepower on defense, and Graham from the offensive side. So let me ask you this. The Seahawks missed the playoffs last year. They still got Russell Wilson. They still have Bobby Wagner at linebacker, Pete Carroll. Do they have enough there to get themselves back into the playoff mix?
Probably yes, because they have a good wide receiver still.
Doug Baldwin, I agree, yeah.
And they have Bobby Wagner.
One of the best in the league, linebacker, yeah.
And Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think quietly the Seahawks, through exiting of the most star power they have, which was on the defensive side, they've remade this team in the face of Wilson and the offense. I don't know if there's enough talent to get them back into the playoffs this particular season because they're in a tough division. I think the 49ers are coming up. I think the Rams clearly established themselves as a young, high-powered team. So I don't know if they can necessarily get back there this offseason. Anytime you have Russell Wilson as your quarterback, I think you're in great shape to be back into the playoffs. What do you think about some talk, though, about Pete Carroll? There's been some whispers that maybe some guys have lost confidence in him. Do you still think Pete Carroll's an elite coach in the NFL?
Yeah.
I do too. I think he's a quality coach, but I think this season in particular is going to be an important one for him.
There's been 2 quarterbacks in OTAs that have been struggling, Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, so some early reports that both Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns and Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mayfield being a rookie, Mahomes being a second-year guy, however, is first at the helm of the offense for the Chiefs, that they've been struggling a little bit. Let me ask you this, Cole. Do you think it's a big deal when there's turnovers and misfires in these early off-season training programs? Or do you think, hey, these are just off-season activities, teams are just practicing and trying to get better, not a big deal at all? Where do you fall?
Baker Mayfield threw 3 interceptions and almost 2 other ones.
Yeah, so he's been having some challenges, but I don't know that it's really that big of a deal that in the OTAs these guys are struggling. I think this is the time and the place where you want to struggle and kind of grow and get over that. So I'm not really too concerned. However, I think these are 2 completely different scenarios with Mahomes having to be the guy for Reed and the Chiefs. I mean, there's no backup plan or plan B. They traded Alex Smith to make Mahomes their #1 guy, so he's going to need to figure it out. But for the Browns, I love Tyrod Taylor, and I actually think Taylor's going to start. I think he should start, and I think he should get the whole season to try and prove out to be a playoff quality team for the Browns, just like he took the Bills to the playoffs last year. We're talking about a guy with a track record who took a team to the playoffs. Do you think Taylor should be the guy to start the year for the Browns?
No, because Baker Mayfield was a first-round pick.
Yeah, I know. You've been really excited about Mayfield, and you've been pretty consistent all along. Do you think the young rookie quarterback should be playing? So you and I differ a little bit about that, but that's what I like about our show. We don't always agree, do we?
Now, here's a guy that's been doing good in OTAs. Teddy Bridgewater from the Jets.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, kind of the forgotten man in the quarterback carousel, so to speak, for the Jets. Talk about a crowded quarterback room. You got Sam Darnold, the draft pick, Josh McCown, the guy who started last year, and I thought battled admirably and had them out to a winning record at one point. And then Teddy Bridgewater, who just a few years ago was the real hot up-and-coming young QB for the Minnesota Vikings, but an injury derailed his career there, and he really never got a chance to get back on the field. Apparently, he's been shining and turning heads in for the Jets. So, Cole, I'm going to put the coaching hat on you. You're Todd Bowles, the head coach of the New York Football Jets. What the heck do you do at quarterback with all three of these guys?
So I would rotate with Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold. Every game, for preseason, I would do Teddy Bridgewater, and then for mid-season, I would do
Sam Darnold?
No, Teddy Bridgewater.
Okay.
And then for the start of the season, I would do Sam Darnold, and the end of the season, Sam Darnold, in the playoffs, Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is kind of similar to how they're going to approach it, especially in the preseason. I wouldn't be surprised if each of these guys got one game to start just to see how they handle the game flow with the first team offense. So I think you're kind of on the right track there with how Todd Bowles is going to approach this with giving them each a shot. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these guys, and I think it really would only have to be Bridgewater, would get traded. I think he's the only tradable guy. Clearly, they're not going to trade Darnold. They just drafted him, and I don't know that McCown has that much trade value. So I could see a scenario where Bridgewater shows well, maybe does well in a preseason game, and gets traded, and they let McCown or Darnold start the season to be their guy.
I bet if Teddy Bridgewater gets traded, I bet then Sam Darnold has to play for the season.
Yeah, I would agree with you that they would just turn the keys right over to Sam Darnold just to let him start. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all.
So we're still talking about quarterbacks in OTAs, but except just on the Ravens.
Yeah, so some interesting developments with the Baltimore Ravens. We all know that they traded up to get Lamar Jackson in the first round. And there were some reports that Joe Flacco, from the draft all the way up until recently, never reached out to say hi or welcome to Lamar Jackson. I don't know if that's that big of a deal. I mean, I feel he should. However, at least he wasn't out making detrimental comments like Ben Roethlisberger was. And from all accounts, Flacco has been saying the right things and is being a leader and welcoming Lamar Jackson into the quarterback room now that activities have started. I've said this before in our videos. I think Joe Flacco is going to be under some pressure here. I think that offense has been kind of stagnant, if not even moving backwards over the past 2 to 3 years. There doesn't seem to be much explosiveness, and we all know the type of explosive player that Lamar Jackson is. So you've been really big on rookie quarterbacks getting their chance to start. What about going up against a guy like Flacco who's won a Super Bowl? Do you feel in this scenario Lamar Jackson should be starting from day one, or how do you feel about the Ravens quarterbacks?
I think that Lamar Jackson could start because he can run in dashes, and Joe Flacco, he can't really scramble that well.
You're right about that. Flacco's a very kind of immobile, sort of a statue back there. We all know about the incredible arm he has. But the way that the NFL's going these days anymore, I think teams and offenses value mobility from the quarterback position. I think it puts a lot of pressure on defenses. And I think Flacco could be in a bit of trouble here from the young upstart quarterback in Jackson.
Here's some bad news for Chargers fans. Hunter Henry tore his ACL.
Yeah, this is really a bummer for a young guy who is really, I feel, coming up.
Had him on my fantasy team last year.
You did, that's right. You made a good pick with him. And I think with Antonio Gates, who was not expected to be there this year, the iconic future Hall of Fame tight end, I thought the lane was going to be wide open for Henry to really assert himself as a dominant pass-catching tight end in the league, but he's hurt now. So, Cole, let me ask you this. The Chargers, a young, up-and-coming guy, hurt. Do they still have enough firepower on offense to get it done and get to where many people expect that team to be into the playoffs this year?
They have Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, that's right there. That's some pretty big names you're naming already. So your point is there's still a lot of offensive touchdowns to be had there.
Carson Wentz tore his ACL too.
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys coming off that injury. It's a scary injury. So we wish the best for Hunter Henry. I did hear on an interview, Charlie Casserly is a very respected former front office guy in the NFL. He didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal. He thought they'd run more 3 wide receiver sets. He thought Melvin Gordon would be more involved in the passing game. Far be it from me, a guy sitting in his living room, to disagree with Charlie Casserly, an iconic NFL front office guy. But I don't think you get over the loss of a tight end by just kind of running 3 wide receiver sets. I think the tight end position in the NFL these days puts so much pressure on safeties and linebackers and working the seams. You look at guys like Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce. I mean, it is a dominant position. And I think the Chargers are going to have a tough time overcoming that. But to your point, there's still enough big names there and big explosive guys like Keenan Allen. I do think they can still make the playoffs.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about some fantasy football before we end our video.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too early in the season to start looking forward to the next fantasy football season. Cole, you had a team last year. That was your very first time playing fantasy football. What did you think about
I thought that was my second year playing it.
Was it? I don't recall you playing 2 years ago. But you're usually right on these kinds of things. Well, anyway, let's take a look at one guy who moved teams, who might be a little bit of a forgotten man in fantasy football, and I'm curious to see how you feel. C.J. Anderson, only 27 years old, last year had 1,000 yards rushing on a very anemic and weak offense for the Denver Broncos. They said, thanks a lot for your efforts. They sent him packing, and he's now with the Carolina Panthers. Cole, Jonathan Stewart out of the Carolina Panthers now. We know about Christian McCaffrey. They're featured back, really more of almost a pass-catching guy. Is there room for C.J. Anderson to kind of rebuild his career and become a preeminent fantasy football running back in the NFL? Your thoughts on C.J. Anderson being in the Carolina Panthers now?
Okay, just make Christian McCaffrey the third down running back.
Well, I get your point. He's definitely the third down running back because he's a pass-catching phenom. I wonder if there's almost room, though, for both those guys to be on the field at the same time, potentially, with the way they kind of can, like, flex out McCaffrey, put him in the slot, and he can kind of...
McCaffrey the, like, wide receiver or something.
Yeah, and to your point, he can play all over the field. So I do think there's room for both guys to get theirs.
You're even saying he can play defense?
I don't know if they're going to have McCaffrey out there making tackles, but I think there is a role for C.J. Anderson, and maybe he doesn't get 1,000 yards rushing, but I think there's more opportunity for touchdowns for C.J. Anderson's in the Panthers offense than there was last year for the Broncos. So I think quietly he could have a nice bounce-back year for fantasy teams.
Do you think the Seahawks have enough talent to make the playoffs? And do you think Joe Flacco's going to start, or Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, guys, so we want to hear from you. Can the Seattle Seahawks get into the playoffs? And also, who should be starting quarterback for the Ravens?
And do you think Hunter Henry's going to be able to play this season?
Well, unfortunately, I think we know the answer to that. He's not. That's a really tough injury. but Joe Flacco or Lamar Jackson, we want to hear from you. Please leave a comment. And then, should people subscribe?
Yeah. Can you please subscribe?
Yeah, guys, hit subscribe to our channel here at the Dad and Cole Football Patrol. We'd love to count on you as active members of our football family. So please do hit subscribe. Thanks for watching the video. What else, Cole?
Nothing.
That's it. See ya.
See ya.
Bye, guys.